an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Immortal Great Souls, Book 1, Bastion, chapters 60 through 63. In these chapters, Scorio has got a pretty wild plan. And, you know, when I said last time, do you think that he wouldn't marinate? I didn't mean like what it turns out, which is that he absolutely is going to. I didn't see it coming. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Dan for commissioning this episode. Dan is here in the chat laughing at me. He says, I guffawed when you said Scorio would marinate in mana if he could. Yeah, your girl just didn't. For the reasons that Leonshi later, points out, his biology doesn't seem compatible. So I just assumed it wasn't something he could do. But I should have realized that he'd try and figure out a version of it. That it would give him ideas. You know what I'm saying? Should have realized that. I'm also curious because we have like these markings that are meant to be on the inside of the flowers that draw mana to them. And that hasn't been mentioned in a while, but I've been sort of thinking, what if he did, added that to the mix? And how would that affect things, if at all? Just as somebody who is a bit of a planner and who likes to write things down, anytime that there's a version of using magic that involves like writing symbols out, it always sort of catches my fancy, and we haven't seen him do anything with that, and there hasn't been any mention of that kind of inscription being done. Like, there's been mention of runes and stuff, but at the academy, for example, someplace that I would think that they would be trying to draw a certain type of mana, I would have expected there to be a mention of whatever that sort of sigil is in the floors of classrooms, or, something that was sort of standard. And it hasn't been mentioned at all. So I'm not really sure if this is just something that, isn't as common as I imagined it to be when it was mentioned, or if it's the sort of thing that, it doesn't provide, enough benefit to bother. But I don't know. It seemed like the alchemist, when he talked to him, that this was something that people did somewhat frequently. So I don't know. But anyway, okay. So let me back up here. I had forgotten when I finished covering the last chapters, I had forgotten how the last thing Scorio says when he passes out after being beaten, he says, I think she likes me, which I don't know why, but I missed that. And that is very funny. So then we go on to chapter 60, and your boy is kind of beginning to freak out. This is a dude who is running out of time. The options that he could use to improve his situation are technically readily available, and he is just being kept from them because of this arbitrary sort of system, and I will call it arbitrary, that doesn't really seem to me like it makes any internal sense. The kind of vibe that I got from Scorio here was what if you didn't get back into school? What if we missed August, September, October, and then you come back in mid-November and your finals are on December 15th. And you spend the first week just kind of getting used to being at school. And then all of a sudden it begins to really sink in, how far behind you are, how much time, how quickly it goes past, and how soon it will be until finals are here. And that even though everybody else around you also has finals, you're not on an equal footing at all, and it can't be made equal except by somebody helping you out by giving you some sort of special treatment, which is just not going to happen. So he's been doing the collecting of heartstones to sell to Jellin, and Jellin tells him, you're entering a very dangerous part of the economy. Those who hunt heartstones do so in large teams and are led by experienced veterans. Please tell me you are not doing this by yourself. Less folks with which to split the profit, Scorio had grinned, and to which I was very Stannis-like said, fewer folks, Scorio. But yeah, the deal that he gets is not as good as I was thinking. 2 iron octs per refined pill, which just doesn't really seem like a fair trade. And I don't know anything, but I don't know. It just, for me, I feel like you could do better. But I guess Scorio is just feeling like, well, here's somebody who I know is cool to like buy shit without asking too many questions. So maybe that's why he doesn't explore the market a little bit further. So when he goes back to the room, his friends are like trying to get him to rest. And it's sort of, this is something that I really do appreciate about this series as opposed to the Cradle series, because in the Cradle series, Lyndon is often told that you can't just keep advancing the way that you are, that this isn't a sustainable pace, that you're going to hurt yourself, burn out, overdo it. Something is going to go wrong and you are going to have to stop for a bit. And even though he does encounter some difficulties, really, he kind of is able to just keep pushing. And there's no real evidence of the fact that he is human like everybody else. And I appreciate that in this, you know, I started off with my like lecture about how rest is absolutely required because I thought we were going to do the sort of same thing here. And I'm so gratified how many conversations there are about the importance of rest, the importance of mindfulness as well as combat training, the importance of sleep in healing and developing muscle. Like, everything about this is just so important. And I feel really like the person who's writing this is somebody who actually does that kind of physical training and knows and has learned. Versus maybe, and I'm not trying to throw aspersions here, Will White, but I don't know how much experience you have in serious athletic training, and maybe you just are like, well, who cares what's real? I'm going to do what I want. And I respect that as well, I admit. By the way, if anybody listening is hearing some strange sounds, I have a kitten on my desk that I'm trying to keep occupied because she's been climbing up my leg while I record sometimes, and it is very distracting to me, so it's easier to have her on my desk than to have her clawing her way up my bare-skinned calf, which is pain. But yeah, so Lianshi is just like, when she has this conversation with Scorio, I love this so much. She's talking about how impossible the odds have been for him to get here. And you have to work twice as hard as everybody else. And Scorio says, I know, I just thought that I could force my way through, just overcome my limitations through sheer effort and willpower alone. And Lianshi says it doesn't work that way. It's why the Academy doesn't duplicate your approach for everyone else. It's why we're warned of excessive coal use, why we're told from the get-go to not consume treasures beyond our abilities. Sure, it would give anyone a momentary advantage, but the cost. And this is just another thing that can sort of happen when you have a main character not seem to suffer any ill effects despite lots of warnings. It gives a sense of the people who are alleged experts not actually knowing what they're talking about. It gives the impression that like they're overcautious alarmists rather than people who really actually know more. And there is some truth to, young upstart comes into a certain field not aware of what the limitations are supposed to be. And so they are able to push past them because it doesn't occur to them that they can't. That's actually a very real thing in a lot of like art as well, and engineering, things like this. But it isn't like when you're dealing with a sort of standardized system like this with an educational system, it would feel a little bit ridiculous if he could just go ahead and do. And I like the fact that he's been warned a lot about coal usage, and those consequences are coming home to roost. And there is a reason that is very real that everybody has warned against it. And he can't just throw his hands up and be like, well, I've decided I'm not going to be affected by it. And that's just my decision. There's just a sort of thing that's like, somebody acting like you can just manifest your life like The Secret. Well, if bad things are happening to you, you're manifesting them. So maybe you need to start trying to be more positive and attract positive things because it's your own fault when it's bad things. It's just like, come on. So anyway, he is also thinking about, and I'll mention here, he mentioned Jova Spike, and imagining her face, and it says her dark skin, her raven hair, and I didn't remember that she was described as dark-skinned. So now I'm reevaluating because I had said that I was picturing Natalie Dormer, is that her name? And now I have to come up with somebody else. And I'm not sure if it's meant to be like dark skin, like in comparison to white skin, or dark-skinned black girl, or what? So I'm like, should I picture her as black, or perhaps like, Asian? I don't know. But I have some vague ideas. If anybody has fan casting, tell me what you're thinking. So he's thinking about Jova, and he is like trying to understand what the deal was with her outburst. And I was just like, dude, it seems pretty evident to me that she has read something that has your name in it, and she's trying to pretend it didn't affect her. And I'm surprised that hasn't seemed to have occurred to him. I think he's just assuming so hard that she... Oh my God, the kitten just fell off the desk. Oh, you little goon. Come here. Jesus Christ, give me a heart attack. Anyway, so I think that he just assumes if she hates him so much that the only way she'd come across anything regarding him is if he asks, and otherwise she might not be exposed to any particular information about him. But I think that whatever is going on here, the two of them have something worked out between the two of them, and so she has found out info about Scorio without having to make an effort to look into it even. But, Dan says that, the manifesting people are so annoying, indeed. After seeing the Acolyte trailer, I call Amanda Stenberg. Or is it Amanda or Amandla? I can't tell if that's a typo or just that's her name. I don't know who that is, but I'm going to look into it after this. So thank you, Dan. So anyway, this thing with with Chloe, I'm going to just sort of speed through this because honestly she kind of does. But the thing with Scorio is that he goes into this believing that there is a possibility he can actually like at least put up a good fight. But it is so embarrassing. She just basically like teleports around him and beats the ever-loving shit out of him. And it's not actual teleportation. I think it's just her like insane speed. But this whole thing is so it reminded me of when Naomi is getting slowed down by Fang, and he just like comes up around her and basically taps her in different areas and humiliates her, except that this person isn't trying to humiliate him. The humiliation is simply a side effect of her doing what she can do. Each time she hit him, she instantly repositioned herself to the most optimum location. I mean, I guess that is teleportation? I don't know. But anyway, eventually he crushes her throat and he is just like, wow, I'm out of the tournament. That fucking sucks. And like, he had been aware this was coming, but there was something that made him think, I'm still going to make it. And again, you guys, I really, really love the author telling us the main character believes in his own plot armor as much as you do. You know, he's basically like, did you assume that somehow Scorio was going to manage to make it through? Yeah, him too. Which, I don't know, there's something very funny about that. Like, I am in the same boat as him watching this happen going, wow, okay, plot twist. I have to start saying plot twist in my own life whenever anything just goes not according to plan. Miss T says Amanda Stenberg played Rue, and it is Amandla with an L. Okay, cool. That'd be interesting to see her. I picture her as so young still, but she's got to be like 20 now at this point, I would assume. Older. So yeah, he had thought he would make it through and what proved to be the exception to all accepted rules and expectations. Suddenly, he felt bereft, childish, immature. The world didn't work that way. You couldn't keep getting lucky, couldn't continuously defy the odds and come ahead through sheer desire alone. So gratifying to read. I just really, really love it. Because, yeah, I mean, and this is also us as people in life. We often see ourselves as the exception to any given rule. We know the rules are there for a reason, but the reasons are always other people, never us. We're the ones that can be trusted to not need rules. Always. So yeah, they knew, you know, his friends. And so when they come out, they're just like, sorry, dude. Because they know immediately, like when they see that he's up against somebody who's a whole level advanced past him, there's just no chance. And Leonis says, we've got 9 weeks left. This isn't over, but it will be if I don't change things up. Scorio looked up, feeling bleak but honest with himself. I can't follow the Academy's routines and expect to come ahead. Even our weekly runs at the Gauntlet won't make a difference compared to top students who are being force-fed elite treasures every day. And he is just sort of sitting here like, I don't know how I'm going to like pull a new thing out of my ass that's going to change the game. And this is when he thinks of Nox and is like, hold on. What if I went to this dude and asked for his advice? And this whole thing is so fascinating. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and go to the actual meetup. Well, no, I have to do the library first because there are a couple weird things here. First of all, they're at the library and Leonci is able to see a book that neither he nor Leonis can see. It's hidden to them because they are still chars. Or cinders. It's hidden to cinders and chars. And I love this idea of just like, yeah, there's going to be restrictions on who can take out what books. And to avoid the, you know, forbidden section of the library Harry Potter scene where he breaks in the middle of the night, we're just going to make it so that the books that are out of bounds for you are invisible and you can't even sense them when you're actually touching them. What a dope idea. I love this so much. But yeah, and when she actually does pull it out and they're able to finally see it because she's actively holding it, even then, it like hurts Leona's head to look at it. There's something weird about the way the light hits it. And he's like, can you just put that away? It's fucking my head up, man. I don't like this. So they entered the cell of fiends and found a handful of strangers gathered there, each to his or her own desk, reading all manner of literary materials under the light of the high lanterns. And they go in very quietly, trying to keep a low profile. But then there's a whole thing later on with somebody who does not worry about that at all. And I just wanted to like simultaneously grin at him and also smack him in the back of the head. So Leonis, there's a book that he pulls out, The Wicked Enchantress of Lost Moor, being an illustrated treatise on the diver's powers, physical charms, and fiendish beguilements as prepared for the 512th constellation of Red Keep. I don't even know what. That feels just like a bunch of words. Like, I don't even know what constellation means. So, okay, this is when Gelagos comes in. Gelagos cracking me up. This dude is just such a fucking chaotic, like, there's a real energy about him of being a sort of impish prankster. And I think that's too broad, a way to describe him. I don't really, but there's like, it feels like, you know, maybe when he was in his teens, he probably was, and he has calmed down and matured a little, but that energy is still like very much right there below the surface. And this whole thing is so funny because he just comes over and is like, hey, Scorio, are you managing to like keep it together despite not being in the tournament, and what's going on with you? And Gelagos says, as Scorio's like about to reply, I suppose Melandria has waited 17 years. Another few minutes won't go awry. And when Scorio presses him, Gelagos says, she's dead, alas, which makes sense, seeing as we're fated to never reincarnate at the same time. When I pass away, she will be reborn, and our correspondence will continue. He paused, blinked, then smiled. We're pen pals, you could say, though our chosen method of communication is painfully obtuse poetry that we store here in the library. We do it to spite each other. I do think it's the highest form of love. He smiled fondly, but enough of that. Your idea? You guys, this is such a delightful thing. I want to know why they're fated to never reincarnate at the same time. Like, how did somebody curse them? You know, what's the deal with that? Have they ever met and they got separated? Or has it always been this sort of like indirect thing? And also writing each other bad poetry is so funny. I love it so much. What a great way to bond. It's like playing very long distance Jackbox somehow. But yeah, so Scorio has a moment when he's like, I don't know if I should tell this guy what my idea is. And he doesn't really tell him. But he does mention Imperial Ghost Toads. To which Gelagos is like, oh, okay, well, that's really specific. So I'm going to assume that you met one of them in the ruins. What are you thinking to do? And Scorio doesn't want to answer him. Eventually, he says, do you know how to locate books on them? And won't respond to the rest of the question. And finally, Gelagos is like, all right, you know what? I'm going to show you. And then, here it is. Being a biological examination of imperial, magisterial, administrative, and minor bureaucratic toads. This should help. Now, is there an index? There is an index. Praise be. I want to mention here, the audiobook narrator for this section and the section later with Leonis in particular was so excellent. This guy has like, when I first started, I was like, okay, you know, this guy's decent. This is perfectly serviceable. And then I kept listening and I was like, this guy's actually quite good. Wow. And now I have reached a couple different points where he has infused a scene with such personality through voice in a way that is beyond what's written. If you get what I'm saying, the delivery even enhances what's written. And this particular character, Gelagos, is one that he gives certain pauses and almost hesitations over certain words and stuff that it really has a picture in my head of what this guy's whole personality is like. And the way, you know, this should help. Now, is there an index? There is an index. Him speaking to himself as he's just leafing through, that's 100% what's happening in that moment, and it feels so natural. So I just want to mention that in case anybody out there is sort of like not sure about audiobook narrators, because a bad audiobook narrator is it's real hard sometimes. And I know that I can be hesitant on investing in a new audiobook if I'm not sure about the narrator. So he finds this section and gives it to him, and then is like, if you'll excuse me, Melandria awaits. I hope the poetry is appropriately infuriating. Oh, it is. She's adopted a particularly grating meter that she knows drives me mad. Delightful. And with that, Gelagos turned and strode away, whistling once more. And yeah, this dude has been reprimanded for whistling by the librarian like a few times, and he just keeps giving the most flowery apologies, but never actually changes his behavior. So, you guys, this whole thing with Quantix, you know what, I'm going to wait until Lianshi describes how this works before I describe this, because, forgive me, but it just sounds like a straight up rap battle. It's like it's like you're insulting each other. It's like they have beef and they're beatboxing. I hope to get to see this so bad. You guys don't even know. I totally understand if there is no instance in which the author needed me to see it, and so it's not included in the story. That's understandable. But when I tell you that my mind flooded with imagery of toads in various hip-hop outfits on an 8 Mile style stage in some sort of like shitty club, I can't overemphasize the delight I felt at this whole like mental picture. Ugh, I really want this to be real. Oh my God, Dan. Oh my God. I'm sorry, those listening, Dan just commented, the jury found Trump guilty on all 34 felony counts. I never thought they were going to convict him. I never thought. Oh my God. That's amazing. I'm so excited. Okay, I'm just sending like a text to Owen real quick, because Owen, like, it was the day before yesterday that he just was like, there's no way that we're going to get a complete, like, because it had to be unanimous. And I was just like, there's no way. And he is going to be so delighted. Yeah. He just texted me back, I don't believe you. I must be asleep. I've literally just copy-pasted Dan's message. Holy shit, comma. The jury found Trump guilty on all 34 felony counts. So thank you for that, Dan. Sorry for the derail. Look, that's a real nice derail. That's the kind of derail I am here for. Like, that's some good news for a change. So I appreciate it. The world feels a little bit brighter. The fact that he was eligible for re-election just made me so disheartened at just the off the top about this coming election. So... Okay. The librarian Oronto that Lianshi brings over to talk to Scorio helps him find the book A Review of Quantix. And then we jump to Scorio heading down into the ruins with his friends, explaining on the way what the deal is with Quantix. And Lianshi says it's tonal 2 rounds. The first consists of 3 quick challenges executed in a row. Low basso rumble beats high-pitched squawk, which beats what Buffo called the brazen croak, which in turn beats the basso rumble. So a game of chance? Not quite. And I don't know why he said a game of chance, except that I was thinking that this would be something that you would sort of plan ahead. And the way that he says that made me go, oh, like, does he mean like rock, paper, scissors? Like you just make the sound without getting a chance to hear what your opponent has done? Or is it determined on like using some sort of medium to transfer your voice that might change the sound of it? Because otherwise I don't really know how this would work. She says, who wins each of the first three challenges and with what sound determines the context of the second round, forming the environment that the true battle takes place in. There are over 100 possible variations on the first round, and the contestants then issue forth songs that weave those results into a combative epic. Whoever unites the first round's variables best and most insultingly wins the Quantic. And I'm listening to this and I'm just like, are you serious? And then Leonis actually says a song battle. And I was like, oh my God, he just decided they're rap battling. It's a beatbox battle. I know he said song battle and I'm sure it's more than, but it's just very funny. I am delighted. I want to see the 8 Mile with Toads very, very much, please. And thank you. So, as they're heading there and this is all being explained, eventually, understandably, Leonis is like, okay, so what does this have to do with Scorio though? Like, that's the Toads do this thing. So, and Leonti's like, yeah, I don't know. He still won't fucking tell me. So this is why we're coming to make sure he doesn't do something absolutely fucking imbecilic. And they meet with Eugene, aka Nox, and Eugene is like, what's up, bruh? Great to see my good friends here again. All of you, welcome, my very, very bestest friends. And Scorio says we have a present for you. Quantic strategies. And he's like, wait, what? Why do you have that? And Scorio's like, you teach me your delightful secret marinating technique. And I will personally read you every page of this book. And understandably, the first question Eugene has is, but why do you want to know? It won't work for you. What do you mean? Sorry, Dan says, I never made the connection. This is basically a rap battle. Exactly. Finally, you learn Nox's real name. We learned Nox's name a couple sections ago because he was definitely called by name in the last section, unless I'm mistaken. But I'm pretty sure we had learned it earlier. Oh boy, I'm sorry, guys. Probably an Amazon person at the front door. But yeah, so Scorio explains that I want to know exactly how you do this because I have a damaged heart. I am hoping that I can make up the lost mana to ensure that I can advance. And I'll find out what it is that you do and then learn a way to implement it for myself. And Lianchi is on the sidelines listening to all of this in utter disbelief because she is just like, you are trying to pretend that your body does something that it doesn't. You are behaving as if you can just force of will your biology into a different, like, organism's biology. That's not how any of this works. And I know that you're used to being able to brute force your shit all the time, but I thought we just had this talk that that's not always possible. And here goes one of the prime examples of when it isn't possible. And in the end, Scorio is like, I will figure it out. And she is like, you are not going to figure it out. You are going to die because you did something fucking idiotic. And if you're going to do it, I am not going to stand here and watch you fucking do it. So bye. And she leaves. And I was like, I do kind of get it, you know? Like when he says, what do you suggest? She replies to him that maybe you need to admit you're defeated and find a way to start over from outside the academy. She's basically saying to him what I was saying about him just like admitting, I have to wait until my heart is healed, and that's going to take a few years. Like, it's not that his heart won't heal unless he does anything. It's that it will heal too slowly for somebody who is as impatient as he is. That's not the same thing, is it? But he's acting as if it simply won't heal otherwise. And she's like, what if we acknowledge the fact that it will, but you're going to have to do something that's going to take a lot longer? And he just won't hear it. So eventually she leaves, and Leonis has a moment with Scorio where he's like, look, dude, I'm going to be real. I agree with Leonci. However, I'm also not going to fucking just leave you here to die by yourself. I don't want you to do this, and it's not my job as your friend to stop you doing the shit you want to do. You're an adult. You know, you get to choose how you live your life. But this sucks. And it is a bummer that how your friends feel about it is just clearly not a factor at all for you. And like, Scorio doesn't really have anything left to say to that, which I think is fair. You know, he's making his feelings known, but still agreeing, I'm going to support my friend. And yet being like, but the fact that you're making me like stand here and watch you do this is kind of fucked up on your part. So just wanted to point that out. I will also say that Scorio, when Leonci tries to tell him not to do the thing, he recites all of his titles again. And it is just so over the top that I can't help but wonder, was he like a real good guy, but he just decides to give himself these fucking titles to sort of give himself this atmosphere of like mystery and danger? It would be really, really funny if he was actually a very excellent person who decided to like formulate an identity of this type, and it got a little out of hand and now he's a red lister. Like, that would be very funny. But anyway, okay. So Nox is leading them down into the area where he has his mana pool. And he explains, and this is a really difficult, tricky thing for me to grasp, but first of all, his place is a little bit of a mess. And when he apologizes about it, Leonis is like, don't worry about it. Scorio's got tons of like rotting meat all over his house. It's like knee deep. Oh, Nox sounded curious and pleased. Very nice, best friend Scorio. Females must be attracted. Something like that, said Scorio. Oh, I don't know why, but that really got me. Females must be attracted. So, there is this gel inside the pool. And he explains that basically the gel acts as a sort of stabilizer to the mana itself. And also helps your body heal in response to the damage being done by being surrounded by all the mana. So what I sort of... Dan says, my nickname for Nox is Horny Orthos. And yes, very much getting some Orthos vibes, so I totally see it. That's a Cradle reference again, guys. Sorry. I'm always referencing Cradle. I can't help myself. But yeah, so what I'm imagining here is, like, let's say you have I'm thinking about it as almost like the gel acting as when you use a carrier to like dilute an essential oil or, adding something to dilute like bleach. It's like the substance that you are using needs to be spread out in a certain way that, sure, technically you could use straight bleach or straight antibiotic or straight whatever, but it will be much more ungainly and much easier to like harm yourself with oversaturation than if you diluted it with some sort of ointment or cream or oil and gave yourself a little bit more like room to work with it before something could potentially go wrong. And also the way he describes it, he says, inside gel, toad, draw mana in, equilibrium where mana taken in, same as mana burned. Push beyond. Use Imperial Gel, break equilibrium, become mana whole. Mana fall toward you, never hit, always miss, circle toad, pull more mana in. And so, what Scorio eventually is like, okay, so it makes it condense around you, and then it as it's helping to heal you, it will also begin to, let's see, where is it? I'm trying to find the spot where he explains like back to Nox, and Nox is really excited because he gets it. I'm trying to find the spot and I can't find it. I'm sorry, because just Nox is so the reaction. Here it is. Use the gel to pass your point of equilibrium. Then some of it misses you, and missing means it just spirals around you, growing thicker as it pulls in more mana behind it. And so this sort of made me think of like getting a pump started with water. Like you need to create a sort of vacuum by pulling, and once you get it started, then the water just continues to flow through as long as you have that vacuum action continually. So that was sort of how I imagined this, as like getting that started. And then the gel also functioning as, I don't know, I'm saying, as if everybody here has the same kind of weird knowledge, because everybody has their own things that they're interested in. But I, as somebody who cooks, am very aware of making simple syrup. And the point of heating the water for simple syrup is that it changes the structure molecularly so that the water can hold more sucrose than it can when it is cold. It changes the structure of the sucrose itself, I think. And so the water can be more saturated with sugar when it's hot than it is when it's cold. So you change the temperature and it just alters the capacity of the water, which is kind of dope. That's sort of what I'm thinking here, is like it does something fundamental to what you are able to tolerate, in addition to like healing you, which I'm sure is a big part of it. So then Scorio gets the bad news, which is that the kind of mana required for this is at least ruby level. And when he hears that, Scorio is just like, oh, Jesus. And he has to do some really quick math. 64,000 volts. Black star plants take 2 weeks to grow, produce a bead every week. 3 weeks till the first bead, 25 beads to make an elixir, which, if completely unfiltered, results in 80 volts. 2 batches, so I need 32,000 volts per batch, and that's 400 plants for each batch. I've got 100 still growing. I can split each of their seeds in 4. That's 400 right there. And Leonis is like, how do you fucking know all this? And I do really enjoy how much his Black Star Farm knowledge is paying off. It's just delightful to me. It's such a weird thing. Like, yeah. There's this meme out there, and I want to compare it to the meme, but not seriously, just as sort of a joke. It's this guy out there who tweeted about how, like, buy some tomato plants and grow tomatoes, sell tomatoes for so much per, and plant 1 tomato per plant until you've got such and such many tomatoes. Multiply times 40 tomatoes, that's, $70,000 a year. And he basically is like acting like he invented the concept of farming for profit, and is telling everybody as if they had no idea how basic math worked. And as, somebody who has just started gardening for the first time this year, he just doesn't include anything about like the price of land or soil or the seeds or the time or any of that. He just acts like it's all automatic, like a machine, and that your crops always will pay off and always the same amount. And that it's just like clockwork and you can just keep growing like that year round every year for 10 years. And the idea that it works that way is laughable. However, here we have, he's trying to compensate by talking about like the odds of how much they're actually able to produce. And there is acknowledgement that like some of the plants are getting rated and it's not going to like be 100% yield, Dan says, sounds like someone with an MBA. 100%. So true. So yeah, Leonis is like, how are you going to find a place though? That's the thing. Like the whole issue with growing a ton of mana in one spot is that everything is going to smell it and then be drawn to it. And this is when Nox chimes in and is like, hey, what if I agreed to watch them so that you could get what you need, but then when you're done with your little experiment, those plants are mine. And Scorio instantly agrees. He doesn't even care if it's like a good deal or not. He's just like, yes. And then comes my favorite. Leona says you're in no position to bargain. And he's letting me use the Imperial Gel, added Scorio. No, you're paying for that with a Quantix treatise. No, said Nox. Favorite friend Scorio paying for Delightful Secret Marinating Technique with treatise. Oh, Leonis made a face. You were going to negotiate something for the gel? Nox dipped his head in acknowledgement. Savvy toad, said Leonis. I'm so delighted that Nox is no fool out here just letting himself get played. Nox is a businessman, and he is going to do what is right for his little business of attracting hot lady toads, and good for him. This is a man that if I were a hot lady toad, would be very interested in. He's a forward thinker. So, finally, Leonis is like, all right, look, dude, we really do need to talk about this, though. Because here's the thing. I need to establish with you that you are aware this could kill you and that you are fully willing to risk that. I need you to stop and acknowledge to me that you know your death is on the table, no matter how small the odds may seem to you. And Scorio is like, yeah, I absolutely know. And it's sort of, when he says, doesn't the variable of your death concern you? No, said Scorio. And inside, he felt nothing. No fear, no elation, no concern. It's an acceptable risk. And it's fascinating that he doesn't feel anything. I don't know what to think about that. It feels like something's wrong with him. That feels like not normal. That feels like a problem. And he doesn't really see it as a problem at all. He's just like, well, that feeling isn't there, so I'm going to do what I want. Instead of being like, that feeling isn't there, and that's weird. Why isn't that feeling there? Like, no sense of self-preservation at all? Why? I would ask, but he doesn't seem to want to know. So, and there is also a line where when he is like trying to push him about whether he understands the intensity of all of this, Scorio says, where is it? Okay, here it is. I know you want to win more than anything else, but is it worth dying over? And I know there are no other good options, but there's a reason the Academy hasn't filled its halls with Imperial gel pools. And Scorio's response there is, well, they don't need to, because they got fat crickets and glittering sage pills. Why would they need to do this? This is the shit I have to do. People who don't have any fucking options. And then my favorite line, I am not going to wait in line. Where is it? let's see. I won't let the Academy tell me how good I'm allowed to be. And what if I'm turned away everywhere I go for being a red lister because Leonis is like, you could do some other job and you might get noticed there. And he's like, yeah, I might, but that's not what I don't want might. I don't want luck to have to play a part in this. And here it is. I won't wait patiently at the back of the line when the line itself is an artificial creation. You guys, that's a bar right there. That is a sermon pastor. My God. I won't wait patiently at the back of the line when the line itself is an artificial creation. Can I get an amen? Holy shit. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it right there. Oh, chef's kiss. That line hit me right between the eyes. I loved it so much. It's just everything. That's everything. That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. We made up these rules, you guys, and now we act like our hands are tied. No, we can just literally do whatever we want. But we're all just like, oh, yeah, this is the way it is. No, it's not the way it is. It's the way we decided it is. And we could just, decide something else. What about that? Fucking idea here. Christ. So anyway, I have to jump ahead here because eventually Leonis is like, all right, bud, well, I'm with you. Let's do this. And we jump to 63. And he is farming, visiting the place at night when he knows his friends wouldn't be okay with him going. I have a theory that they fucking know he's going and he really thinks he's keeping it like secret and that he's being real subtle about it and that they are fully aware. But he has to go to the next tournament to just watch because he has been kicked out. And the fight here, well, real quick, he goes and visits with Nox again, who shows him a good place to plant. There's lots of mushrooms, which Nox eats very excitedly. He plants them and then sits down to read the book with him. But we don't get to hear it, which is fine, but I am curious. And then, when we come back, Leonis made Emberling a little over 2 weeks later. And Leonis's behavior is so saddening to me because, he gets some of his memories back. I don't know how many you get back. I don't know if it's all of them or just some of them. I feel like it's got to be some. I know it's been mentioned. I just don't remember. But when Leonis comes out of his trial, he is very quiet and he wields this club that is described as being like the same diameter from one end to the other. So it's just like this huge block of stone with like a handle at the base that comes out. I can't even imagine this. I keep picturing like a giant, one of those like paletas popsicles, I keep imagining like a giant popsicle. But it's got runes all over it. And when Scorio asks if he can read them, Leonis just says, I can, but he doesn't tell him what they say. And he is very somber. Let's see. Leonis was somber, his uncharacteristic gravity silencing Scorio. For better or worse, I'm an Emberling now. And when he kind of like peters off, it's Scorio who is so impatient to hear more. But Leonshi, who seems to just be allowing him to take his time, because clearly she understands what a big deal this is, having just happened to him, and is trying to let him have a bit of time to process. But understandably, Scorio is just like, how about you just tell me what the fuck is going on, the two of you? I don't like being left out like this. And he suggests, like, maybe we should go back in and you can use your weapon. And Leonis is like, I just don't think so. If you guys want to go, I'll just chill here and wait for you. And Scorio really wants to go, but he forces himself to really look at Leonis and see the way this man is feeling. And is like, no, why don't we just wrap up for the day? And when they head out, he's like, why don't we stop and get a little snacky snack? And Leonis says, you're making me feel like a child. You said it, not me. Scorio forced a grin. And so Leonis tries to sort of be like jocular again, but it's clearly a bit forced and unnatural at this point. And what I am imagining is that there is some like awful tragedy and perhaps deep regret, like maybe, and when I say regret, a lot of times it's the sort of thing where people think, oh, I did the wrong thing. But regret can be present even if you did the right thing. You know, it's not always, I wish I could make a different choice. Regret can just be the fact that the choices I had sucked. And neither of them was going to get me what I wanted, which was a complete solution. And I feel like Leonis must have had to make a really difficult decision that affected a lot of people. And maybe is coping with the fact that he would make that same decision again. He understands why he did it, but the weight of it just feels like he has suddenly felt the pressure of expectation of outside factors. He's somebody who has been able to sort of live for himself. And there is a sense of all at once realizing the fate of how many people are on my shoulders. Like, it's something that he has been very lighthearted without, but he is somebody who cares about people. The way that he cares about these two, he's always like the first to die because he's willing to just throw himself in there. And I have to imagine if he were a ruler, it would be the same thing with his people. And so if there comes a point where he has to make a decision where he can't protect everybody, and it's the best decision, but it still results in lots of deaths, that will haunt him forever because he'll always be like, wasn't there something else I could have done? While knowing, no, there wasn't. You know? So anyway, that's the general vibe that I get off of him. And I don't have any specific ideas or theories on this, but just the sense of him as somebody who has suddenly kind of grown up mentally and realized what's at stake in a much deeper, more profound way than they were understanding initially. So then we go to the actual tournament, and Scorio is so excited to see Jova Spike fight. He can't wait. And he's just thinking about like the people in the school and the types of reputations that they all have. But Jova is the one who's just head and shoulders above everybody else. And it's in so many different respects. First of all, it's the fact that she is ahead of the class. Everybody knows it. Everybody wants to get in good with her, to be her friend somehow, to give her presents, or get in on her good side. And she is equally, except for her like two closest friends, as distant with everyone as she ever was. It's like she only has these two people that she likes. And otherwise, it's, let's see, Zala or Juniper. Those are the two people. She spoke little and laughed only when she was with either Zala or Juniper. So there's that, which is like, it's a combo of being the best and also that just natural aloofness that makes everybody just want more of you, which I have always wished I had, but I am never, ever capable of shutting the fuck up. So I am going to have to let go of the hope I can ever develop a cool, aloof persona. I am not the one. That's Rashawn. Rashawn can be cool and aloof. Your girl, it's just not in the cards for me. But then there's also the fact that despite being ahead of the class, This bitch is so focused, and I love it. She's described as, quote, searingly intense as the blue tip of a gas fire. Love it. So good. But she isn't taking it for granted. I'm just better than everybody else. I don't even have to try. I get these amazing treasures. I get pills that you can only dream of. I don't need to push myself because all of that. No, that is not her. This bitch is like, I am getting all of the best stuff and I'm going to maximize every single ounce of it that I get. And I feel like, and this is tying in with my whole theory about Jova and Scorio somehow actually working together. I think there is something in her notes to herself about how urgent it is that she get her memories back as soon as she can. I feel like she is being pushed by something very, very specific beyond just, I want to be the best, beyond just her personal drive that comes from her personality. I think there is something explicit in the notes that she has left for herself that is telling her, you got to get on this, and it is of utmost importance, and don't waste your fucking time. Every second that you have, you need to be working towards this thing. And I think, because this is the whole, my favorite part, the fight that happens that he gets like so sucked into is Jova Spike against Accardi. What is her name? Ravenna Accardi, who is the second in the class. So it's the top two fighting each other, which, as Leona says, is like, I'm sorry for everybody else fighting because nobody is going to watch their fight. But they're fighting, and Jova just disappears. And I fucking should have known what was happening. Of course I should have known. It's very clear what's happening. I didn't get it. And I really want to know, everybody out there who's listening, did you know what was happening? Did you get it? I felt like such a dingbat once I realized, because I was like, dodoy. So Jova disappears in the midst of this fight because she is leveling up. She has her trial. And so when she comes back, not only is she now she is an Emberling here. She becomes, what is it, a Tomb Spark. So not only is she like advanced, but also she has whatever memories she got back and is not going to have any time to process that because she's literally in the middle of a fight, which is a wild place for this to happen. There's something about the whole way that this goes down that is so Jova to me. Like, of course, she levels up in front of everybody in the midst of a fight with the number 2 fighter in the class at a critical moment that's like climactic. It's like peak everything. And it's a shame too, because like as she's fighting Ravenna is proving to have some abilities that are beyond what they were expecting, with the way that she is pulling like rock out of the floor, like big chunks of it, compared to, she starts off with like fist sized chunks, and eventually she takes like a 2x4 square up. And Leon, she's like, oh, I didn't know she could do that. And clearly Jova didn't either. And what Ravenna's trying to do is like, I'm not going to kill her. I'm just going to knock her out of the ring because that will disqualify her. And then it doesn't have to be a kind of fight that she dictates where it's her taking damage. It would just be like finding a sort of technicality with which to win, which is genius actually. And I felt so bad because Ravenna is doing so well. Like, it's hard for her. She's really pushing herself, and her nose starts bleeding. Like, she is really going for it. And it's feeling like she may be able to pull this off. And then this woman disappears. It takes a while. Everybody is wondering what the hell's going on. And then when Jova comes back, she is a Tomb Spark, and Ravenna is flipping out. And it's sort of weird because Ravenna tries to turn and run. And when Leona says, why is she acting terrified, Leon? She says, wouldn't you be if you were fighting a tomb spark? Ravenna let out an anguished cry and threw a smaller rock. It was a wild hurl, but more by luck, it seemed to fly right at Jova. It detonated a foot from her, as if it had been thrown right at a stone wall. And that is her shroud activating. Ravenna stood shaking her head in abject denial, then broke into a run, darting away to the left. Jova angled to intercept and broke into a sprint. The transition from slow strides to all-out running was shocking. A moment later, she intercepted Ravenna, who screamed and dropped into a crouch, arms wrapped around her head. I have got to say, Ravenna, not the best showing from you after finding out that this girl is a tomb spark. Just to curl up and, go into the fetal position? What is that? What happened to you? I understand that being a tomb spark, it's very intimidating, but that response feels beyond what I would ever expect. It's like she gave up, and there's a difference between knowing you're going to lose and just giving up like that. In the last section, there's a part where Leonis is climbing that wall and he knows he's not going to make it, but he doesn't let go. He keeps going until he literally can't anymore. And I expected that from Ravenna based on how stoic she was described as being at the beginning of the fight. But then she just literally flees, which is crazy to me. But yeah, Jova puts a boot on her shoulder and just shoves her out of the ring. And poor Scorio is sitting there realizing that this bitch that he thought he was going to be able to catch up to is already twice ahead of him now. And is super depressed over it. And my official prediction is that she has remembered something that is going to render whatever their wager is null and void. It's going to be a moot point. She, I feel, is going to turn a corner because of her trial and whatever information she has gotten from her memories. So I am curious. I'm very curious. Looking forward to the next chapters. All right. So I have got to wrap this one up, but thank you guys again for hanging out with me, for dealing with my little kitten who has been a menace this whole time. Thank you to Dan, both for commissioning this and telling me the great news. I appreciate you a lot. And until next week, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.